watching Rogers TV.
Good evening and welcome back to Addressing the Issue. I'm your host, Andy Straisfeld. It's an exciting arc that we were doing. We did voter apathy and low voter turnout with Alex de Donville last week, and now we have our panel to talk about voter apathy and the media. So just recently, gentlemen, I was able to take a look at my old Intro to Political Science book, and it isolated, the key factors of voter apathy. Voter apathy by suppression, where the government tries to keep you away from voting. So people say, I'm not going to vote anymore. Voter suppression by education, where, well, I don't think I'm smart enough to vote, so then I'm not going to vote. And then everybody's juicy one, voter apathy in the media. And it goes on to talk about how, in certain cases, it's been alleged that headlines and stories that some media outlets put out choose to focus on increasing voter apathy. What are your thoughts? With us today, we have Dave Carroll, host of Brant Life, and Vincent Ball, reporter for the Brantford Expositor. So, which one of you wants to take a shot at this?
Oh boy, can I, Vince? All right, so we want to talk about voter apathy
and the media,
and the media. Well, I'll tell you. My background is in broadcasting. I spent a lot of time in the community serving other people, and then also here on Rogers TV doing more of a community access thing. And so part of what we do on Brant Life is invite people of all stripes, between people who have a pet snake farm and people that are doing charity bike runs, but also local politicians to be able to come on and tell their story. And so for me, when I look broad stroke at voter apathy, honestly, I think it's a lack of storytelling. Storytelling is incredibly important, and guys like Vince do an incredible job of both reporting but also trying to be able to paint a picture. But the more pictures that can be painted of who the people are who are running for office, the better, right? Because it's tough these days for people to be able to find avenues to be able to jump in and go, hey, I get who is running. I understand who this person is. I understand what this person is doing. I understand why this person is doing what they're doing. There are in the wide world of social media, and the internet is everywhere, seemingly it feels like there are less easy on-ramps for people to go, I understand what's actually happening, which is kind of strange, and maybe that's why we're doing this show, to take a look at why there are less on-ramps.
Part of the reason might be, was there a single issue that really galvanized the whole population? Mm-hmm. That would be another option. If you look back historically in Brantford, for example, we had voter turnout of 47% back between 2010 and 2016. It was very high, and there was a lot of reasons for that. One of the reasons was the casino debate. I'm sure you remember the casino debate.
Very well.
It was like that. There was a yes side and a no side.
Yep.
And
I remember still who was on what side all those years ago.
Well, yeah, and it was really drew a lot of voters out. I'm not sure that we've had an issue like that in the last two elections here locally that galvanized the community to that extent. That's one. The other thing I think you got to look at is the changing population. I'd look back at past elections, and we had as many as 27,000 people voting 10, 15 years ago. This last election, we barely made it over 20,000. Why? Population's growing, number of people voting is shrinking. How is that? People aren't engaged for a lot of reasons, and I don't necessarily think it's necessarily the media. I think it's probably because the population is growing. People are coming in from out of town. They may not be all that familiar with issues, and they may not really care about a lot of the things that we in the media care about. Does anybody in Ward 1 really care about what's happening in Ward 5 or Ward 3? I'm not so sure that they do.
All right, so Alex wrote in his paper, and he actually paid a compliment. He said that, if you go back to, let's say, 20 years ago when you were in the newsroom, there was a wide variety of different types of reporters. And I guess now you're you're downsized. There's limits to that. You can't report everything that you want to report. You can't report everything that needs to be reported. But at the end of the day, the issue was that when you, and we're going to talk more about this later on when we look at an excerpt from his research project. But when you talk about what has happened from Aerodale to COVID, to freedom movement, to perks for politicians, right? We have this galvanization, according to what was written in his report, that politicians want to have a macro view, and the people who are running specifically for these one-topic issues have a very micro view. And when they don't win, it's like they take their ball and they go home. Thoughts? Let's have you start this time.
Well, that's probably true. The people are running on one issue, and I think that's one of the dangers, and I was going to get into that later, of voter apathy. You can have one strong candidate with a lot of appeal win an election based on that one issue. We've had people who were councillors who were basically, I would say, one-issue councillors who got elected year after year on that platform. Working with the media to prevent that particular platform too, I might add, to the expense of other stuff. Yeah, you're right. They do look at the bigger issues. But what does Mr., as my friend would say, what does Mr. and Mrs. Tim Horton think when they're having coffee about it? You go in and ask them about a lot of these different things, they wouldn't care. But I got a four-way stop. I got a lot of traffic going down my street, and my councillor gets a stoplight there, a stop sign there. Hey, great stuff. That's all they really want to know about. The water's going, you can flush your toilets, you can get water, you can get all this kind of stuff. What are these big issues that somebody's talking about? It doesn't necessarily really resonate with them in a lot of different ways.
All right, Dave.
The single issue stuff is a roll of the dice, right? Because it might hit and it might not, right? There was in our not the last election, but the election before, our current mayor Kevin Davis, there was a sign right before you go over the Lorne Bridge that said, "If I was mayor, you'd be home
exactly
by
right
now." And I remember thinking, wow, that's a roll of the dice to be able to go, hey, I wonder if people will go, hey, I care enough about the traffic and the blockage between the Lorne Bridge and the traffic that goes back up Brand Ave that I'm going to go, cool, great. And I remember thinking that was a gutsy move, and it paid off for him.
It probably did, but it would be interesting to go back and see if those people are home any faster
Indeed.
now, 4 years later, because I'm not so sure that they are.
I'm not sure either, but when it comes to elections, that was a roll of the dice. And oddly enough, I remember thinking that probably wouldn't be something that people would resonate enough to be able to go, yeah, I'm going to go vote or not. But some of the people that I know who are traditionally non-voters who lived in that New West Brant actually told me, hey, yeah, I'm going to vote because of this. And I thought, really?
Well, yeah, that is a really...
We're going to come right back after this message. It looks like we've got the right topic for you gentlemen tonight. Stay with us on Addressing the Issue. We'll be back in a few moments.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
The unsolved ones, we have to stand up
and approach these cases in a way outside the box.
Let the world know, is those out there that did commit a murder, there are people that are coming after you.
There's just a lot of good people trying to do the right thing.
Because it's something that you have to be passionate about.
Are you low on food? Struggling to pay the bills? Overwhelmed by life's challenges? When you need support but don't know where to turn, just dial 211. 211 connects you to the programs or services near you.
211, how can I help you?
211, help starts here.
For frank discussion on Canadian politics and issues that matter to you, tune in to Addressing the Issue with Andy Straisfeld, Fridays at 6:30 on Rogers TV.
Celebrate the richness of cultural diversity at the Guelph and District Multicultural Festival from June 9th to 11th at Riverside Park in Guelph. Experience food from around the world, enjoy live music and dancing, cultural performances, shopping, children's activities, and more. Visit gdmf.ca for more information.
Welcome back to Addressing the Issue with us, Dave Carroll, Vincent Ball. Dave, you're animated. You're excited. Let's finish off that thought. You were talking about the traffic in Ward 1 and people saying that they would have voted that issue. So let's go for that one.
And I think part of the reason for that is, and Dave's made a great point here, is that it became an issue for the whole city, though. Traditionally, it was Ward 1, trying to get from Ward 1 to the Highway 403. Well, the way people were doing it, they were going through Ward 5. People in Ward 5 were getting a little tired of all the traffic. Coming in, it was coming down Brand Ave. There's another area of the city. So all of a sudden, this one issue became a citywide issue. So I think that was very clever on his part.
But it doesn't happen all the time,
that's
right?
Right. You could miss.
And so for me, when I was in my last year of high school, and the gentleman who was running for mayor at the time, Chris Friel, when he was much younger, he was reaching out to people like me. In fact, even in this studio, I was doing work with him here. We were on talk shows here, and I used to go with him to different places inside high schools, and he would reach out to the younger people. He was a younger guy, and he was the guy that actually got me engaged in politics. But it wasn't just casino or single issue. It was hey, young people, get involved in politics. This means something. And it wasn't just I got engaged in one election. It got me engaged in elections for the rest of my life.
And you didn't really know what the reason or single issue was?
Certainly not. I was like,
wasn't anything you could identify.
This was somebody who resonated with me as a young person and made me care about politics. And so for me, I look and go, these broad stroke things actually have the ability to engage people in, hey, let's engage forever, as opposed to just, I want to get home in time for the pork chops.
And there's not really an issue there, is there?
No. It was broad.
Yeah.
And a broad net.
One of the best campaign things I ever saw was a guy running for the mayor of Sarnia, and he took out a want ad in the local paper, and he says, no big signs, no brochures, no big parties. I'll spend your money the same way I spend my own. Vote for me. It cost him maybe $50, but he got a lot of media attention for that.
All right, so let's talk about that. Because the thing is, I spoke about it. One of the reasons why we created this show was we don't want political operatives here. We don't want, the slant. We don't want the talking over each other. So let's talk about this. Media people. I was part of the media when we did the debates here for Rogers for municipal, and from that we grew this show. So you have, last municipal election, right? You have a wide variety of councillors. There's no shortage. At least 5 or 6 in each ward. You had for me, I'm a horse racing fan. You had an open race, okay? Yeah, you had some pedigree. You had some. You pretty much figured who was going to win there or whatever. But some surprises came out. Everybody had a different point of view. You had Mayor Davis, you had Dave Robel, you had Brantford Batman, and you had John Turmel. Now, okay, at the end of the day, is voter apathy tied to the perception of the candidates out there? In a certain case, when I go look for a person to vote for, I'm going to be honest and I'm going to say, look, I'm looking for someone who's going to resonate across a whole bunch of issues, and I'm going to say that's the best person for me. But when you put a person in, like a John Turmel or any other type of person who's going to make it interesting, let's be polite, I don't want to get sued, they'll make the campaign interesting. Do we actually lose value? So we'll start with you. Do you think that is actually, or is that
I think it's inconsequential.
Okay, it's
inconsequential. So there is a extraordinarily small group of people that are going to feel anything one way or another about the very fringe candidates. I threw this out on Facebook because I knew I was going to be on this show tonight, and I said, hey, I'm going to be on a show talking about why there's voter apathy, and I had a number of people, and again, this is just, you know, non-substantiated stories, but I had, for example, one mother who is a little bit older and has kids and friends in their like late 20s, early 30s, and they said they don't know why they should vote. They don't know anybody who is running, and they don't know any of the issues or why they should even be involved. And so why would they even care? And so and I'll say that I don't think that this is the this is the fault of our local media, because I know like people go on and on about local media. The media is this, the media is that. The media is Vince, and Vince does an incredible job at telling stories. The media is me and some of my friends that are like, boy, we do what we can to be able to tell these stories. And so the issue is not our fringe candidates. The issue is finding ways to actually speak to the people in Brantford to be able to go, why should you care? Pitch something that people will care about. Like, make proposals, find ways to tell stories, open up your life a little bit to be able to go, oh yeah, I can see myself in you, and I care enough to be able to go, this matters. And so that's important.
And I would say that your earlier point about former Mayor Friel about engaging people, when he first became mayor, it was a pretty tough time for the city, as I recall. And I can remember him going out and saying, do one thing for your community this year, just one thing. Either as volunteer at you know, the food bank, or collect money for this, or do something for your community. And I think that's a very simple, easy way of resonating with your average person,
because
right?
some people don't know what politics is. Like, it may seem like something that's simple to people like us that are political wonks, but some people really don't get what governance and what politics actually is, and what the best part of it is, and we can get pretty jaded about it.
I remember one of my favorite times was we had our editorial board at the Expositor, and we had the Liberal leadership federally, and John Manley came in to talk to us. So this is a great opportunity to sit there and talk to them about it, right? And I can remember we wrote the story by committee afterwards, which was just a disaster. And I had asked him about the decision the federal government made about not going to Iraq. I said, I want to hear what you have to say about that. And he said, well, we did the right decision, but we did a really bad job of explaining it to the people. And that was his statement. Well, I get, oh, okay, that's not a bad statement, you know. And I get back, and somebody else had asked about federal gas tax transfer. And that was going to be the focus of the story. Well, you go into Tim Hortons and say, what do you think about the federal government's gas tax? They go,
I think nothing about
you have to explain it to them for 20 minutes. They might get it, and then they might come up with an opinion. But if you go into a coffee shop and said, damn it, we should be in Iraq, you're going to get a reaction. And people, well, hold on a second. So there's, you know, sometimes I think in the media, we think we know what's important. Not necessarily true.
Good
It doesn't resonate with Mr. and Mrs. Tim Hortons.
Let's hold that for a second, because we're going to throw some gas on the fire. We're going to put some Tabasco on the meal. We're going to come back to addressing the issue in just a moment.
It's closing time, and you stayed out longer than you planned. So now you can't drive, and the buses have stopped running. You could always call your girlfriend. Or maybe your roommate? What about your best friend? You could just dial 1-888-TAXI-GUY or use the Taxi Guy app. The call and the app are free, and they both connect you to a local cab company to bring you home safely. Visit ArriveAlive.org to find out more. Arrive Alive, drive sober.
October 5th, 2014, my daughter was hit by a train. She was walking along the sides of the tracks, and it shattered her world.
Paint like a pro with artist Lisa Braun. She offers a step-by-step tutorial that will have you creating a masterpiece from the comfort of your own home. On the Canvas, Sundays at 10 a.m. on Rogers TV.
All right, we're back with addressing the issue. Okay, I'm having fun. I know you guys are too. So now here's the part where we're going to make it a little bit spicy. So we're going back to Alex de Nonville's report, and in that report he highlighted. The whole report was done anonymously, so we do not know which counselor said what. But there was a very spicy comment where this counselor was questioning not only social media but traditional media. And here is the quote. We don't have TV stations like CHCH. We have Rogers, controlled out of Cambridge and Kitchener-Waterloo. We have very little influence on the number of hours we have for television, and television here and there are limited and not really good. The Expositor, Brantford Expositor, has very little content other than the immediate 2 or 3 pages, but no local editorial. And the AM station's not even allowed to say Brantford. Newspapers are struggling to stay alive. Reporters are struggling to keep their jobs. And that's what they care about. So our ability to communicate through the media is almost non-existent. So I don't even know. Is that a justifiable argument that is leading to apathy? Because people are not hearing the message either through the traditional means or through what this counselor felt was a lack of media representation. Let's have you go.
I'd suggest they propose a great story for people to be inspired by. Instead of going, hey, we don't, go, what do we have? And then be a part of creating a solution to be able to allow people to engage in the process in a better way. They're not entirely wrong. Some of the different specific facts that they said are true. I mean, Vince and I have been involved in media for a long time and in different ways, but there are still avenues for people to be able to come and tell their story. And frankly, there are an infinite number of ways for politicians to be able to tell their story in better ways than there used to be. In fact, when people come to me and say, hey, there are no media avenues, I want to be involved in media these days, hey, how do I get into radio? I've been involved in radio, TV, a bunch of different medias. I say, well, guess what? Be creative. You have ways to be creative that I didn't have when I was going through journalism school and broadcast school. You can go and be creative. And so guess what? If people feel like there are no ways to be able to tell their story, that's because people aren't being creative enough. There are ways to be able to do it, and the people that are doing it in some of these traditional ways are incredible people. Some of the people that I know inside of our local traditional media are some of the best people that I know that exist in this community and go and put their whole life into doing it. And so I don't have a lot of time a day for criticism about our media in Brantford.
All right, Vincent Ball.
Well, factually, there's no argument that there's fewer reporters around, and that's just the way it is. And the business and the industry has changed a great deal. But having said that, readership of the Expositor online is exceptionally high.
It's true.
It is exceptionally high. Yeah. And if there's a story that resonates with people, they read it. I can tell you that when I was covering Brantford City Council, one of the best stories I ever did was about, maybe 3 or 4 paragraphs long. You know what it was? It was all about the new stoplights that they were putting in across the street from Giant Tiger on King George Road.
People love stoplights. Yeah,
why? Because everybody said, oh my God, they're doing that, or finally they're doing that kind of thing. I don't know. I don't have a whole lot of time for that criticism because, I mean, all you have to do is call. You got a story, call.
Yeah.
Now, the story that they might want to tell versus us asking questions about the story that they want to tell, you'd be surprised at how gun-shy they get pretty quickly after that. As soon as you start asking a few questions about, well, why is that important? What's going on here? Yeah. Why are you coming to me with this?
Tell an actually good story.
Tell the story.
Yeah.
So You know, and we're there. I mean, I don't know of anybody else who covers city council, and I can remember a time when, you know, sitting at the city council chamber, there'd be one reporter, me, or from the Expositor, there'd be another one from the Brant News, or another one from CKPC, and Rogers would be taping it. Yeah. Right? So yeah, you do that. That probably doesn't happen anymore. Yeah. Right? You have maybe one reporter there, and there's a lot of stuff that gets covered on a daily basis. And who ever heard of a politician not being heard? Like, how is that possible?
All right, so let me put the fire extinguisher to this little brush fire. Let's bring it back to the whole concept of where we were. So this whole episode ties up the concept of low voter turnout and voter apathy. Whatever role media plays. So with whatever time we have left, we'll start with you, Vincent. I know you are a member of the Fifth Estate, that's fine, but what can you tell the viewership that is going to be beneficial for us to try to turn this trend backwards? So what do we need to do in the media to help the viewer, the reader, whatever media they do, either social or traditional, what do we need to do in order to get them to turn back time and go back to being that proud legacy of that, at least whatever Canadians did, they always went out to vote?
Okay, well, be engaged in your community on a lot of different levels, not just through necessarily the media, but you know, through our neighborhood associations. There's a way to get involved. I think also you may want to think about, you know, the impact of the pandemic on people too. We haven't really talked about that, but I think, you know, I got a friend who always says, take care of your own house. And maybe that's what people were doing. They were taking care of their own house, and they're not really worried about any other kind of issues out there. People are busy right now. You know, you've got, you're teaching your kids at home through the pandemic, you're doing all this kind of stuff. I would say, look, the pandemic's behind us now, we're moving forward, get re-engaged in your community on a lot of different levels. I've got a friend of mine who's out there collecting stuff, and she's delivering, you know, food to people and old age homes and so on and so on, engaged in her community in a different way. She knows everything that's going on in this
I'll say a couple of quick things. A guy like Vince, one of the last times I saw Vince in person was at my son's high school basketball game, because he referees high school basketball. So when he says get involved in the community, it's not just on like what we think about traditionally of, oh, community foundation, all these different things. Get involved in your community and some of the things you have passions about. And when you said, how do we go back to where we were? I don't think we go back to where we were. I think you go, I'm going to take my kids to the polling stations. My kids are voters because I took them when they were kids. When they were young, I took them into the polling stations. I showed them that we were voting. I modeled it. And not only that, but I talked to them about why we were doing it. And so I say, don't go back, go forward. Go, hey, let's go in together. Let me model this. Let me tell you why I'm doing it, and let me show you why I'm doing it, and tell the story. We have, like, individuals have social media too. It's not just, hey, go vote. It's a, here's why I care.
All right.
And those kind of discussions, do you have those kind of discussions around the dinner table anymore?
Yeah.
Do people have those? I don't know.
We're going to have another episode because we're finished with time. So listen, tune in to Dave Carroll on Brant Life. Read Vincent Ball in the Brantford Expositor. Thanks very much for tuning in to our second episode. This arc is now completed. We'll be having a new topic next week. We'll let you know on that one. First of all, on behalf of us here at Addressing the Issue, wishing you a great evening. Stay safe.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.
Cystic fibrosis never takes a holiday. More than 4,000 Canadians like me wake up with cystic fibrosis, go to bed with cystic fibrosis, and do hours of treatments and medications every day. We go to many medical appointments, spend time in hospital, and still face life-shortening lung infections and organ damage.
Join us on Sunday, May 28th at Waterloo Park as we go further for all. Register at walk.cysticfibrosis.ca.
After a night out with your friends, there's always options for getting home safely. You could call your BFF, your mom or dad, whoever you can